This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And I'm Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to the Creep Street Podcast.
Buckle up, friends.
Do it to it. Thank you all for joining us today. We can't tell you how much it means to us, and we're happy to have you here on board. Please remember to like, rate, subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend, anything like that. These little things, they add up and they mean the world to us, and they really help the cast.
So true. So true. Obviously Spotify has a new system.
Yeah.
Hit it. It's real quick. It literally takes a second. Hit us with those 5 stars. Hit it. Whatever app you listen to. If it's got a grading system, hit us with the top. Hit us with
smash it.
Hit us with the peak numbers.
Yes, baby.
You know?
That's right. And to be kept up on what we're doing, follow us on Instagram at Creep Street Podcast, Twitter at Creep Street Pod. We have a Facebook page, and we also have a smaller sub-Facebook group called Citizens of the Milky Way, where people can just talk, post articles, memes. We'll give you a little some updates on the podcast. We'll let you know what episodes we're doing before we make it public, and other little things like that. So that's called Citizens of the Milky Way. Feel free to join.
Yes.
Also, if one episode a week ain't cutting it,
it's not, friend.
Which we know it's just not. We have a solution for you. It's at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. We have 3 different tiers, each at a different donation level, and you get some great bonus content on there. We just posted our ranking of the Scream movies 1 through 4.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be posting a spoiler cast of the newest Scream 5 or Scream 2022 or whatever you want to call it. As well as some other great bonus content there for you. So feel free to check that out at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. And Dylan, last week we had one hell of a story.
Oh man, people have been going nuts for it. I still am thinking about it.
I know that was a lingerer, baby.
It makes you, it gets stuck in your head. It's like, damn.
Yeah.
What a shitty thing to have had happen to somebody.
Just truly, whatever happened, who knows what the real story is, but whatever did happen, it's wild. That's all I know for sure. And it was about Muzak. So what else could you ask for?
Right, exactly.
But this week, we have something a little different. We're going back to our bread and butter, our meat and taters.
Oh,
as it were.
Oh, my God.
Dylan, will you please tell the fine, beautiful people what we're talking about this week?
Get your K2 meters, get your night vision goggles, get your infrared cameras, because tonight we are talking about the haunting of Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
If you have seen any ghost hunting show in your life, there is a chance that you watched, there's a good chance you watched an episode about this location.
Yes, every ghost hunting show has a hard-on for Waverly Hills.
As they should. As do I.
And you're about to hear why they do. Let me give you my sources real quick. First was a book called The History and Hauntings of Waverly Hills Sanatorium by E.R. Vernon and Angel Ray. And then The Incredibly Haunted Waverly Hills Sanatorium by Brent Swanser at Mysterious Universe, and then just a slew of, boy, did I put Discovery Plus to work this week.
Oh, absolutely. Shout out to Discovery Plus, as always.
Paranormal Lockdown, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, Kindred Spirits, they all have done Waverly Hills stuff, so just gobbled up a bunch of that stuff. Now, this is an episode that has been on the horizon for quite some time.
Absolutely.
By far, this is one of the most famous haunted locations in the United States. If you Google most haunted locations in the United States, this will be on almost every list.
Even goddamn Google has it, you guys.
Absolutely.
Google.
The name alone, Waverly Hills Sanatorium, screams haunting.
Yeah.
And it's also located in Louisville, Kentucky, which we know Kentucky.
Yes. Kentucky is a big hotbed for paranormal activity. Not only ghosts, but definitely ghosts.
Absolutely.
As well.
Now, according to some, the very land that the abandoned Waverly Hills stands on has always been haunted. In 1883, the land where it sits was purchased by one Major Thomas Hayes, who declared the place as the Hayes family home. The road that it sat along is Page Lane, and Major Hayes moved in along with his wife and 3 daughters. Well, it soon dawned on the family that there was no school within a reasonable distance for the Hayes daughters to go to.
Oh, fuck. You hate to hear it.
Thus, a one-room schoolhouse was erected. Now, Waverly Hills would go on to be several stories tall, huge place, with several various wings and annexes added on, but this one small one-room schoolhouse was where it began. A woman named Lizzie Lee Harris was hired to be the teacher at this one-room schoolhouse, and now what they needed next was a name for the place. Well, the teacher, Lizzie, she had a personal love for the writings of Sir Walter Scott, particularly his Waverly novels. She told Major Hayes that she thought the name Waverly would make a great name for the school. Hayes liked it too, and the school itself was built on top of a windswept hill there located in southern Jefferson County, and so he put the two together, and the place was officially named Waverly Hills. Well, jumping forward to the turn of the 20th century, and tuberculosis is a terrible force to be reckoned with in the States and around the world.
Oof, yeah.
In fact, this time in history, Louisville, Kentucky had one of the highest tuberculosis death rates in the whole country.
Oh, weird.
So in 1908, this property in which the school sat was purchased by the Board of Tuberculosis Hospital, and here is something interesting I didn't know. In order to keep the name of the place, the hospital removed the second E from Waverly, so then it just became Waverly spelled W-A-V-E-R-L-Y instead of a L-E-Y. The purpose of purchasing this place was to build a place that could house the sick and to treat them and sort of keep them, isolated from those who weren't sick, obviously. The area where Waverly stood was low swampland that bordered along the Ohio River. Waverly was in fact just one of many places that quickly sprung up all over the place when TB was at its worst. Also keep in mind what we know about water being a conduit for paranormal activity.
True.
And like we know from our recent Patreon episode, the Ohio River in particular is said to be host of many cryptids and supernatural beings.
That's right.
Also, just the being a swampland and stuff, it was a natural breeding ground for just harmful bacteria as well. Well, in 1910, Waverly Hills was now a 2-story building boasting 40 beds. A couple years later, in 1912, the local city hospital was under construction, getting expanded, and it needed a place for all of its TB patients. While they were, building the place up and expanding, so they shipped their patients to Waverly Hills, and all around the grounds, treatment tents were erected. It was kind of like an open-air hospital. Patients could enjoy fresh air and sunshine while also being isolated in this wooded area. During this time, tuberculosis cases are just going higher and higher, which caused a need for Waverly Hills also to be expanded to accommodate this increasing number of patients. Because of this, they were granted $25,000 for expansion. By August of 1912, the patients in Waverly Hills were moved out also into treatment tents while the construction was taking place. Not only was space added to house more patients, but they also installed what would come to be grimly known as the Death Chute.
Oh, God. Yeah, that's not ideal. I think we can all agree when you hear that, you think, not great.
Exactly, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It was a chute that allowed staff at the hospital to discreetly send bodies down of the bodies of the deceased down to the underground without wheeling them out in front of other patients. Now, down underground, there is a little rail system that allowed them to be loaded and removed into a train car. I mean, think about it. Many of the living patients there also understood that many of them were not going to survive, so just wheeling dead bodies out in front of them.
Yeah, that's not really ideal.
Not great for morale. But what this expansion also did was allow for an additional 90 beds. 50 of these new beds were part of a special children's wing that had been put in place. Now, this wing, from what I can understand, it was more used to treat patients, but it was more specifically meant for patients who were parents who had children to look after. And surprise, surprise, this only led to children getting sick.
Oh, yeah.
But as years would go on, Waverly Hills would continue to expand, jumping forward to March of 1924, and Waverly Hills saw the beginning of a 5-story addition being built on. Waverly Hills would now be capable of housing up to 400 patients at once. But despite even that, the ever-increasing cases of TB required more space. But thanks to donated land and money, they were able to keep building. And the new addition was officially opened on October 27th, 1926. All in all, they believe that the number of patients who died at Waverly Hills over the years can number anywhere between 6,000 to 63,000 people. Now,
wow.
The author of the book says they think 63 is very blown out of proportion, but still, we can imagine a high number.
A very high number. Damn.
Yeah,
TB was just absolutely ruthless.
It was filthy.
It was filthy.
It was a filthy fucking disease. Waverly Hills was considered to be one of the most advanced tuberculosis treatment facilities in the U.S., if not the world. Yet despite even that, they were often at the mercy of the disease. The invention of streptomycin would not be unveiled until 1943. So before then, doctors were often trying nearly anything to see if it had an effect on it. Many of these treatments were rather ghastly and inhumane. For example, before streptomycin, it was believed that simple fresh air was the best course of action. Patients would be placed in front of open windows and out on porches regardless of the time of year. You can actually find photos of patients sitting in chairs completely covered in snow.
Wow.
They had what they called sunrooms also, where the patients were treated with ultraviolet light. They just had ultraviolet light beamed at them.
Oh, God.
And in one of the worst ones, because obviously tuberculosis affects the lungs, they would insert a balloon into a patient's lung and then blow it up, fill it with air, and this would force the lung to expand.
Oh, God, that seems so painful.
As you can imagine, this often led to deadly consequences. They would even sometimes remove some of the patient's ribs so that the balloon in the lung could expand even farther.
Oh, God.
So as I said before, 1943 saw the introduction of streptomycin, which was a game changer. The number of cases began to rapidly decrease year after year until Waverly Hills Sanatorium closed its doors in June of 1961, with the remaining patients being taken to the nearby Hazelwood Sanatorium in Louisville. It would open again the next year in 1962 as the Woodhaven Geriatric Center, a nursing home. But from the get-go, this was a pretty shitty place. They were overcrowded and understaffed, and there were countless reports of neglect and abuse of the elderly patients.
Oh, God.
The state of Kentucky would close it for good in 1982. Since then, Waverly Hills has stood abandoned, but not for lack of trying. Many attempts were made at salvaging the place over the years. In 1983, the building and the land was bought with the hopes of turning it into a minimum security prison.
Oh.
But that never went anywhere. Then there was talk about turning it into an apartment complex, which also went nowhere. In March of 1996, a man named Robert Alberhaskey, founder of the Alberhaskey Christ the Redeemer Foundation, made plans to erect the world's tallest statue of Jesus on the site. The statue was planned to be 150 feet tall, 150 feet wide, and they were going to put it right on top of the roof of Waverly Hills.
Damn.
Next, they planned to convert the building itself into an attraction that housed a chapel, a theater, and even a gift shop. In all, this project was projected to cost around $12 million, but they were only able to raise about $3,000. So in December of 1997, the project was scrapped.
$3,000.
$3,000.
Oh man, I wonder who that one guy was.
I know, right? In 2001, Waverly Hills was sold to its current owners, Tina and Charlie Mattingly. They often would hold Halloween events and ghost hunting tours, with all of the proceeds going to renovating the place, which is what they still do. You can even book a tour today, even stay overnight.
Oh.
In fact, Charlie Mattingly, his own father, worked as an orderly at Waverly Hills for about 4 years, back when it was operating. Mm-hmm. But yeah, their plans, I think they even still plan on turning it into like a 4-star hotel for thrill seekers to come and...
Interesting.
But yeah, so this brings us to the haunting portion.
Please.
Of our tale.
Okay, here we go. Take a sip of your drink, take a puff of that stank.
That's right.
Let's dive in.
Well, in the years after its official closure in 1982, Waverly Hills began to build its reputation as being an incredibly haunted location. By the time the Mattingleys purchased the place in 2001, it was essentially just a decayed, rotting behemoth we think of today. The building today looks like what you think of when you think of a haunted, abandoned place. It's this huge building that's hulking. You know, the nature is kind of reclaimed some of it. There's like plant life growing in. There's wild animals inside of it. Aside from just stories of hauntings, the abandoned facility was often a place of shelter for vagrants and drug addicts.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention vandals who would come to, further destroy the place by knocking out windows and shit. Daredevil teenagers would often meet there for parties and to scare the shit out of themselves. And given the dilapidated state of the place, people would often get themselves hurt.
Yeah, I was wondering that. I was thinking, I'm sure if you stay overnight, you gotta sign a waiver or something like that, because it can't be totally safe staying there.
And they've done a bit to make it's still, like I said, they're trying to renovate it. There's parts of the place you can't go to still.
Right.
The place you are allowed to visit, they've done a good job of making sure it's safe. In fact, a few bodies have been found during the restoration of the place. Folks who maybe were homeless or just passing through town who ended up falling or getting hurt or something. Not only were there countless patients that had died at Waverly Hills, but staff too. The conditions there and the level of human suffering were at times so intense that both patients and staff occasionally took their own lives within the halls of Waverly. The specifics of these stories we will get into, because we're gonna go through this place floor by floor.
Oh, okay.
And talk about what is said to haunt each one. Mm-hmm. When it comes to types of hauntings, you will see everything at Waverly. Residual hauntings, intelligent hauntings, even inhuman spirits, demonic spirits, shadow people.
Yeah, shadow people, I guess, is really what Waverly is really known for. That's kind of its main thing, is that you will often see shadow people. And I've even heard of doppelgangers.
Yes, doppelgangers too. There's doppelgangers. So you have these ghosts there of real people who used to be alive, but then these inhuman spirits coming in as well. And of course, the experiences people have here run the gamut. Doors opening and slamming by themselves despite being locked, voices and screaming, the feeling of being touched, full-bodied apparitions, you name it. Here's a fascinating one. So even today, there's no electricity in Waverly Hills. For legal purposes, they did have to install exit signs throughout the building.
Right.
As obviously a precaution, since the place is open for public tours. But other than that, no electricity except in designated areas where they've purposely put it. Like they have a place made up where folks can even stay the night, bathrooms, things like that. But folks will often be on the outside of the building only to look up and see a room or several rooms that are lit up like as if the electricity's on.
Wow.
And only to go and check and find the room vacant and completely dark. So, let's start off with the main entrance and the first floor.
Please.
Well, right as you enter through the main entrance, it said folks will immediately feel eyes on them, as if Waverly Hills and its inhabitants know you're there. Sometimes right inside the main entrance, it said you may be treated to the sight of a ghost of an elderly woman. She's covered in blood, and it's said that her wrists and ankles are bound in chains. She cries and calls out to you for help. What an awful thing to see. First thing you walk in.
Oh, God, that's horrifying.
And it makes me wonder, was this an abused elderly person from when it was
Right. Oh, God.
Given the nature of the chains, like I said, I wonder if this was an abused patient who was back when it was a nursing home. But the horrors on the first floor don't stop there. On the first floor, you'll find many rooms that were crucial to the function of Waverly Hills, such as the lobby, the morgue, and the x-ray room. But it's right there in the lobby where they had found evidence of some sort of occult gathering. Many claimed that a satanic group would meet up there for rituals. Now, whether this group was satanic or not, on the first floor, they did find the body of a homeless man and his dog in the elevator shaft. Now, you might be thinking, well, this place is decrepit. Maybe the man and his dog accidentally fell to their death. But the fact is, both the man and the dog were found to have their eyes gouged out.
What the fuck?
The owners discovered the body as they were sweeping through the place with video cameras because they were documenting things for the insurance company.
Right.
And they found like this body. Clearly this man and his dog were subject to some sort of ritual.
Oh, God.
The second floor. The second floor has some pretty interesting stuff. This is apparently where you'll find the building's kitchen, cafeteria, chapel, and there is apparently still an old piano or organ located on that floor that of course isn't functional anymore after it's been there years and years.
But I mean, of course there is a creepy ass, huge ass instrument
of course
in this building. I mean, there's just gotta be.
But it's said that while on this floor you will often hear the sound of an organ playing, only to rush into that room and it will cease right as you enter. It also makes sense that the kitchen and cafeteria are on this floor, as it said you will often smell food cooking. One of the authors of the book I used says she smelled what smelled like fresh brownies baking while she was on the second floor. In fact, it was on this floor that the author claimed to catch an EVP, an electronic voice phenomena, and it was the voice of what sounded like a young girl saying, "She has a flashlight. Give me a flashlight." And even, "Put the flashlight down."
Wow.
But perhaps the most infamous and feared entity that it was said to reside on the second floor, one of the most feared in the whole building, is an inhuman spirit known only as the Creeper.
Okay, so that's bad.
Yeah, for sure it's inhuman, maybe even demonic. In some accounts, the entity moves on all fours, but in others, the Creeper has no legs at all, but just a torso and arms, and it can crawl silently up walls and onto the ceiling.
Oh God, that sounds like the, what is it called? One of the yokai that we talked about, the Taki, I believe.
According to many people who have seen the Creeper, it's very much like a shadow person, but one that crawls up walls and doesn't seem to have legs.
Oh God.
Very freaky indeed.
Oh God, could you imagine seeing one of those motherfuckers?
Horrible. Absolutely horrible.
I just can't. I just could not, and I think I'd have to just die.
Let's move on up to the third floor. The third floor now is where you'll find another one of Waverly Hills' most famous entities. This one seems to be much nicer than the Creeper. I'd rather bump into this one than the Creeper on floor 2.
Okay, not saying much, but
right.
I'll take it.
Well, it's said that on the third floor, you may come across an entity named Timmy, the ghost of a boy they believe to be between the ages of 6 and 7. They think maybe his parents were either patients there and he got sick and died, something like that. Now, while you were on the second floor running from the Creeper, it's possible that up above you may have heard the sound of a rolling ball. Well, that's Timmy.
Timmy?
It's said that Timmy, the ghost of this boy, will often be spotted playing with his leather ball. And if not Timmy himself, then you'll at least see the ball. In fact, many folks who will visit the place will often bring a ball or some kind of toy to give Timmy as sort of just an act of goodwill. There's been accounts of people rolling the ball into the dark and it rolling back to them.
Wow.
Okay, can't believe I'm doing this, but we're going to the fourth floor.
God damn it. Okay, fine.
Now, depending on who you ask, the fourth floor is perhaps one of the creepiest and most active of all floors. Much of the fourth floor is actually closed off to the public simply because it's unsafe. A lot of the structure is unsafe. But you're allowed to access some of it. It's said that the entire floor is crawling from head to toe with shadow people.
Oh, God.
Doors will open and slam constantly. Here's an interesting fact. While you're on tour of the fourth floor, they often recommend turning out your flashlight. Apparently, when your eyes adjust to the dark, it makes it much easier to see the shadow people because, as we know from other stories, they say shadow people are darker than dark.
Yes.
And if you have your light on and your eyes adjusting to both, sometimes it's hard to see. If you just turn it all off and just let whatever light is coming in from the moon or whatever into the building, you actually will see them better.
Wow. I mean, I guess that does make sense. You're just got to get used to it.
Exactly.
Oh, God.
Here's a quote that our author had about her experience on the 4th floor.
We were told by Tina not to use flashlights just because your eyes have a hard time adjusting back and forth, and we, all 5 of us, saw 6 shadows looking down at us, like down the hall, and we had placed a K2 meter down there, and it was complete blackness, just watching my K2 meter be drug into a room, which looked like it was being lit up by a white TV of static electricity, and that actually creeped me out the most. I think that is the time that I was like, okay, this is real, but that it was my most creepiest time sitting there playing ball for like 10 minutes with something down there, and then watching shadow people pretty much looking over you and then stealing your K2 meter and dragging it into a room. It's pretty much on my top list of haunted places.
So, once again, also, this static. That's something we've talked about, this thing of like almost static electricity in the air. We've tried, especially with like poltergeist stories.
Indeed. I mean, it only makes sense that you would find this weird static electricity there because you're finding pretty much everything else there. So why not?
Absolutely. And now we've come to the 5th floor. The floor that I think, from what I've read in my sources, to me, sounds like the scariest floor.
Really?
The 5th floor is where you will find the infamous Room 502.
Oh, God.
In 1928, there was a nurse working at Waverly Hills that was going through a very rough time. She was 29 years old. Her name was Mary Hillenberg. She was working as head nurse at the time there at Waverly Hills. Well, she discovered she was pregnant. And seeing as this happened out of wedlock, this was, granted, it's 1928, times were different. And who knows her situation other than that, but whatever the case may be, Mary Hillenberg, she hanged herself from a light fixture just outside of room 502. It's not certain how long she was there till she was discovered. I can't believe it was that long if it's an operating hospital.
Right.
In 1932, another nurse is believed to have leapt from the 5th floor patio, falling to her death. Now, there's much speculation as to why she would have done this. Obviously it's very possible she could have been battling with mental illness or on her own, who knows, considering they're surrounded by constant death and decay at Waverly Hills, and then who knows what's going on in her personal life too, you never know.
Yeah.
Others believe that she didn't jump, but that maybe she was pushed by a malevolent force.
Fuck.
This woman is said to still be seen walking the halls of the 5th floor. It's said that whenever people are in or near room 502, voices will be heard, particularly the ones shouting with a menacing, "Get out!" The 5th floor is also where you'll find access to the chute, the Death Chute that we talked about earlier.
That's right.
And it's said that this chute is haunted by countless shadow people. Many report an oppressive feeling in the tunnel. But in one of my sources, it says that they were in room 502. This was a ghost hunt. This was recent. And there began to be a flurry of activity. And one of their people in their group was so freaked out that they were going to jump. They were going to jump out the window.
Oh my God.
From what I can tell, not because they suddenly wanted to die, but because this panic had sort of taken away they just thought for whatever reason they couldn't go back out the door into the hallway. I just got to get away from this thing. And people wonder, is there something, does this room do that to people?
Right.
Maybe, like you said, for a second it seemed like the person was more, I just got to get away. They weren't really thinking about the consequences of death.
Right. They just wanted to get out so badly they would do anything to get out.
Right. And so it's like, is 502, is there something special about 502 that does sort of an incubator of sadness and oppression and death? Wouldn't you know it, in a place like Waverly Hills, even the f***ing roof is haunted.
Oh my God.
It's said that up on the roof, you will often hear children singing, "Ring Around the Rosie."
Of course. I mean, what else are they going to sing? They're scary ghost children. I mean, what in the hell?
Now, a witness posted about their experience on the roof on the site True Ghost Tales. And here is what they said happened.
My friends and I went out on the roof and just hung out, thinking about the stories we heard about the place when we began to see figures moving around in the dark inside the area of the 5th floor where the patients were bedded outside for air. Shadows everywhere. We began to see perfect formations of shadow people that were not there. My friend Chris lost his cool and wanted to bolt out of the place by jumping from the 5th floor roof. I said, "Are you nuts? We gotta go back out the way we came." So after building up the courage to face whatever it was in the halls and the rooms on the 5th floor and exit, we had to enter it. We couldn't run due to the darkness and the mess the place was in, so we held tight on our arms and entered the hall area. I wanted to shut my eyes, but I had to see where I was going. Mostly I saw shadows surrounding us, banging that seemed to come from everywhere, the ceiling, floor, and walls. As we entered the stairwell, we somehow ended up on the floor below us and not the ground floor. As we entered the 4th floor, our eyes were more adjusted. The moonlight reflected through the building, and we had a pretty good sight of the hall up to the point where the hall bent in a slight angle. It had rained the night before, and due to the shape of the building and no windows left to block it out, the rain had entered the building at will. On the floor were puddles of water, and we began to see bare footprints appearing out of the puddles, as if someone had just walked through the puddle barefooted and left tracks. The shadows were still surrounding us in the halls. The doors to patients' rooms began to slam shut. Chris, who acted as the toughest guy in the group, began to cry. As I tried to calm him down, something crashed against the wall near where we stood. When I looked at the floor, it was a brick. Something had just hurled a brick at us, hitting the wall. Chris then began to run down the hall, and we gave chase. At some point between Chris and us, behind Chris and in front of us, 2 bright balls of light shot from one room across the hall and into the adjacent room. We ran past the area where the light traveled to get to Chris, who stopped at the end of the hall, not knowing where to go. We calmed him a little, and it was as if someone just shut it all off like a light switch. There were no more shadows, no banging, no flashing light.
Wow, so those orbs of light, we've heard those in so many different episodes and different stories here in Creep Street, especially like, it's not only thought to be ghosts or whatever.
Right.
I don't know, like it was at Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes.
It was prevalent in Hellfire Farm.
Yes.
I mean, it's been in a lot of different episodes of ours. Even, I think, in Parent Family, aka The Conjuring,
Absolutely. And think about this Chris fella. He was supposed to be the toughest son of a bitch in the room.
Right.
But notice how he was somehow feeling it harder than everyone else. He was crying.
Yes.
And this orb of light, remember, they were chasing him, and the light was in between him and the other people who were chasing after Chris. It was like it was chasing after him. And think about how he was going to throw himself out the window.
Again, once again, yes.
Absolutely. That's why I think, despite, even though the creeper's super freaky, I mean, the 5th floor is where it's at, it sounds like, in terms of the scary shit.
Right.
There's scary shit all over the place there, but Jesus.
But then also the 4th floor has got those shadow people. I mean, that's horrifying too.
Absolutely.
It's hard to decide which floor is the scariest floor. I don't know.
Absolutely. And, folks have 1,000,001 different kinds of experiences there.
Right.
There's a little something for everybody. Like I said, there's all sorts. There's intelligent hauntings, residual hauntings, shadow people, maybe even demonic creatures. Like, there's everything in this place.
Yeah, I don't know if I could go, honestly. I mean, I want to say I would be brave and I'd be up for it and I would do a great job. But honestly, I don't know, man.
I don't know.
I wish I could.
It's super freaky.
It really is. But what an interesting episode and a fascinating topic. Dylan, thank you so much for doing all of that fantastic research.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Waverly Hills is a classic haunted place. What's kind of interesting is, typically when we do haunting stories, we follow a group of people, either a person or a family, and it's about how when it started, how it built, and hopefully to the point where it ends. When you're dealing with a place like Waverly, you can tell the backstory about how it used to be a sanatorium, then a nursing home. Because there was so much death and agony in this place, there's not really a central story you can follow like you do with, like, say, the Parent Family or Amityville, where it's centered, there's a beginning and an end. This is just like, it's kind of everything. It's everything crammed in at once. It's the Smash Brothers of hauntings.
It really is. That's a good way of putting it. Real.
It is the Super Smash Brothers of hauntings.
Yes. And what a absolute, it's just This is one of those ones that it's like it's so popular for a reason. It's got everything, and it's scary.
It's so scary. You know, you could fill a book with the number of experiences people had. Most of the book I used, like a third of the book was just people's personal experiences.
Right.
That was why, like, I chose a few here, but like this episode could be 5 hours long with just people's
experiences.
Because today you can book. I think they have public tours where they take about 100 people at a time. I think, but they break it up. They do it like 10 to a floor.
Oh,
it sounds
okay.
like. Mm-hmm. So you're with a good group of people. So if you're a little like scared about things, that would be a great way to do it first, I think. You're with a group of 10 people. So like there's strength in numbers. Or you can pay a little extra and like book the place for a night with like your group of friends.
Oh, that would be so scary.
And what's cool is I think they have 1 or 2 places on site that they fixed up with beds, electricity, so you can have a place to sleep before you know, so it's not like you have to stay up all night if you book that would be kind of fun to like have your friends there and like.
Yeah, I mean, if any of our listeners here are brave enough to do it, please do it and let us know what it's all about and how you like it.
That is going to wrap us up for the haunting of Waverly Hills Sanatorium.
Now, Dylan, I need a little something. Do you know what I need? Do you know what I'm thinking?
I think I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's not tuberculosis.
No.
It's the names of our top-tier Patreon subscribers.
Fantastic.
Of course, the Dream James Watkins, the Finnish Face Via Lundqvist, the Madman Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud Carl Staub, the Firestarter Heather Carter, the Conqueror Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, and the Serve Sexy Sam Hackworth.
That's right. Thank you so much to all of our Patreon subscribers. You mean so much to us, and we thank you so much for your love and support. To be just like them and to get some bonus Creep Street content, feel free to check out patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. We also hope that you can like, rate, subscribe, give us a rating, give us a follow, anything like that really helps the podcast. Just spread the word, maybe tell a friend, tell a family member, post about it somewhere, whatever you can do. We appreciate it.
Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
A good night and goodbye.
Goodbye.